Enjoy, he says. Hey, how you doing? The Deeper Dive. Dave Lockren, Adam Shaw, bringing you a monster, massive Goliath behemoth 15-game baseball slate. Adam, tell you what, man, the season is rapidly coming to an end. I think after this, we've got 15 days of baseball left.
Yeah, something like that. I was looking at Orioles tickets today and trying to figure out a weekend to go, and it was like, oh well, I'm out of town this weekend. They're out of town next weekend, and then the season ends the following weekend. So, yeah, coming up on the end.
Coming up on the end, so hopefully we can make it well worthwhile. I think we can. Tonight's interesting though, and for one reason being, you click on say DraftKings or FanDuel, you look at the player pool, you don't look at the matchups, you don't look at the price points. You say, okay, decent amount of quality pitchers, but then when you really break it down, like I just continuously find myself going to the cheaper pitchers, even on two pitcher sites.
Yeah, I have been too. There's a lot of hitters that I'm willing to pay for, and at least on DraftKings, they actually did a pretty good job pricing up most of the hitters. The exception to that being the Yankees, who obviously we'll talk about. Their pricing appears to be broken, but other than that, other than them, there were a lot of guys like when I was doing the show with Jake this morning, where I would start to say that I was interested in so and so, and then I'd look at his price and be like, "Whoa, that was $500 more than I thought he would be."
Yeah, there's a lot of that for sure. I forget what team. When I was writing today's article, I literally am typing out, and he's affordable across the industry. And I look up, and he's like $1,000 more than I thought. So, yeah, the Yankee pricing though is uncanny. Like I don't I don't know how they get this cheap against a righty that gets mutilated by righties and is facing a lot of righties with power. So I don't know, man. Maybe you can explain it.
Yeah, no, it's just completely mispriced.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's jump into it. Baltimore and the Chicago White Sox. We've got James Shields and Luis Ortiz making his first career start. He did make an appearance out of the bullpen. Did not make it one inning, however, giving up 3 runs, 2 walks with no strikeouts in 2/3 of an inning. James Shields, though, interestingly enough, has been worse on the road this year by a pretty significant margin. And he's been worse against lefties, too. He's also allowed 17 stolen bases, which is the fifth or sixth most in the league, Adam. I understand wholeheartedly that the Orioles are not a good baseball team, but I would have more interest in speed guys or even a Mancini type bat here than I would in James Shields tonight, being that he's not really that cheap. What about
Yeah, I mean,
you?
relative to other pitchers on the slate, he's really not that inexpensive. And even when he does pitch well, he normally doesn't really like rack up strikeouts or anything. So I'm not looking to go to Shields here. I'm not that high on Baltimore either. I do think Trey Mancini is a good value option. I have him as one of my top point per dollar position player plays on DraftKings.
Me too.
3,600, I think, is just too cheap for him. If you wanted to go to Jonathan VR to be contrarian at a pretty weak second base position, he's been playing pretty well. And I mean, this is a guy that is 2 seasons removed from a very good year with Milwaukee. So I think he has some talent. He does have speed and will run at will. So you can go there. Nothing I'm prioritizing though. But VR and Mancini, I think, are both fine plays.
Those are the two that I like and am targeting. But VR obviously for the base stealing upside, and Mancini just because this is a really good spot for him. Like Mancini in general, this is a really good spot. Now the other side, you have Luis Ortiz. I don't know how many pitches he's going to throw. You have Yohan Moncada leading off, Yomer Sanchez, Abreu, Palka, Avisel Garcia. You do have Narvaez catching, so it's not Castillo, it's not Kevin Smith, who are both much worse in terms of base stealing upside. Any interest in the White Sox?
If I'm playing a lot of lineups, then sure. I mean, I think they do have a lot of upside here. Luis Ortiz making his first career big league start. He isn't projected to be anything special. He was one of the pieces in the Jonathan Scope trade. Kind of has a ceiling of like a number 3 starter. Most likely will be a back of the rotation pitcher. Has only made 6 starts above AA before this, so we don't really know what to expect from him. But I don't expect it to be great. My biggest concern with the White Sox is just that they're so expensive, and you can get to a lot of teams that are just better hitters than the White Sox for similar prices when you're looking to stack. So that makes them kind of a secondary stack for me. I do think that Moncada is one of the top second base options, though at only 4,100. I think is a pretty fair price point.
Yeah, I agree. plus second base isn't that deep. There is one second baseman that we'll get to shortly that on DraftKings is too cheap. But I think it's really more of like a tertiary stack, not one that you're targeting heavily. But if you do have a bunch of lineups, the White Sox, I think you need to get at least some of them in there, Adam. That's kind of how I'm seeing this.
Yeah, I mean it's a huge upside spot for sure. You have
Sure.
an unknown pitcher in Ortiz. You have a bad Baltimore bullpen, especially the part of it that would pitch if Ortiz doesn't pitch well. So I mean, there's certainly upside for them, but it's a 15 game slate, and we can be pretty picky, especially with the Yankees pricing how it is. You know, a ton of ownership is going to go there, which makes it so any team that's not the Yankees becomes kind of a contrarian stack.
Yeah, certainly. Um, the Yankees, you know what? Let's move to this game right now. It's the next one on our list, the Yankees in Toronto. Masahiro Tanaka and Marco Estrada. We're going to talk a lot about the Yankees hitters here, so let's get pitching out of the way first in the form of Masahiro Tanaka. You're not getting him at a discount, Adam. You know, if you're playing Tanaka, you're paying 11.6 for him on DraftKings, and on FanDuel, you're paying 10.2 for him. He's the second highest priced pitcher on both sites. Coming off a really, really solid game against Seattle at Safeco. Do you have interest here? Because I just don't think I can make it work with the teams that I'm targeting hitter wise. But maybe you can change my mind.
I mean, I like Tanaka. Obviously, we're
Sure.
paying a premium for him. He's not in play for me in cash games just because of that price. But there's no doubting his ceiling. I mean, the guy's got great swing and miss stuff, and any given night he's capable of putting together one of those 40-point outings. So if you again, it's like if you're playing a bunch of lineups and you have some of these cheap stacks, then by all means get some Tanaka in there because he does have as much upside as anyone on the slate, not named Scherzer. So I think it's fine. It's just that from like hand building lineups and building lineups that I really like, it just hasn't. I haven't been wanting to pay up for him. So I think he's fine. I think it's a good Toronto lineup for him as well. No Justin Smoke, no Kendrys Morales. Both make me more interested in Tanaka. It's just that you end up having to give up a lot to get to him.
Yeah, you definitely do. And I don't. So the truth is, like pitching, even though this slate's so deep, pitching is not, at least from a roster construction standpoint, Adam. If you factor in matchup plus price tag plus talent, all of that, and then add in the idea that you still have to fit in quality hitters, I don't think pitching's that deep for having 30 teams going tonight.
No, most of the talented pitchers I think are either priced up or in tough matchups. So it has been tough to really fall in love with anything.
It certainly has. So, all right, let's get to the Yankee hitters. You have McCutchen leading off, followed by Stanton, Hicks, Andujar, Gregorius, Gleyber Torres, and then Gary Sanchez batting seventh, Luke Voigt eighth, and Brett Gardner batting ninth. Lots of different ways you can work a stack in here. And let's just forget about ownership for a second and talk about the matchup and where you see it.
Yeah, so I mean, Estrada, you never really know what you're gonna get start to start. Obviously, he went through a stretch where he's just been getting absolutely destroyed. Was dealing with back issues, pitching through that. His last start, he was a bit better. His movement on his pitches looked better, the best we'd seen in a while. So I think there's at least a chance that maybe Estrada's back to like an average pitcher and not a total gas can. But even when he's on, he normally will give up power to right-handed hitters. So I think you can go to these guys. You know, obviously Giancarlo Stanton's the best power hitter in the lineup. You don't have a slider from Estrada, which is always important when considering Stanton. Gary Sanchez, obviously a top catching option, has a ton of power from the right side. But even guys like Miguel Andujar, Gleyber Torres, Luke Voigt, I think all have, you know, the power from the right side to do damage. Andrew McCutchen leading off, I think has plenty of upside too. So, I mean, you can get really creative with this team if you're stacking, you know, mixing in guys at the bottom because you know they'll be lower owned than the guys at the top. And if you're not stacking, I still think that you can target some of these guys for one-offs because while I think McCutchen and Stanton will have, you know, massive ownership and Sanchez, I think you can go to guys, you know, maybe like Miguel Andujar or Gleyber Torres as a one-off, get a ton of upside, get exposure to this Yankees team, but do it in a way where you're not competing with a quarter of the field.
I love Andujar today a lot. And, you know, the thing, too, is Estrada does not throw a slider. And, you know, you look at how this team ranks. Just look at Fangraphs.com pitch values. Obviously, it's kind of surface level stuff, but still, it's good enough for now to conserve time. You know, the Yankees rank third best against the fastball, third best against changeups, which he is almost exclusively fastball changeup Estrada to right-handed hitters, and they're 28th against the slider collectively. So, whether or not Estrada does well tonight, it is a nightmare matchup for him just based on this lineup.
Yeah, absolutely. And just because of the type of pitcher Estrada is, it makes it so like a lot of people are going to go to the Yankees. They'll go to McCutchen, they'll go to Stanton, and then they'll go to Yankee stacks. But he's the type of pitcher where if he's pitching well, you don't really want a stack against him so much as you would want, a couple of one-offs because he will give up home runs. So I think that like there are some times where I don't like targeting one-offs that are in a popular stack, but this isn't one of those times. I think that you can be a little bit contrarian even by taking some of the lower owned Yankees in the form of one-offs instead of stacks, and you'll just be ahead of, like if you plug in Gleyber Torres as a second base one-off, batting sixth, he's probably not going to be that popular. And a lot of teams that do have him will also have McCutchen, Stanton, and Duhar, Gregorius. So if those guys struggle and Torres hits, a solo home run, you're kind of ahead of all those teams.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a top team. Obviously, if you're trying to get away from ownership, you're getting away from this game. But it doesn't. Again, I understand what we're saying. It doesn't take away from how great of a spot they're in. Just more so, baseball has a lot of variance, and there's no guarantees of anything here. So if you were to fade the Yankees stacks, and they don't have look, they could still put up 5 runs and it doesn't kill you. It's if they go off and have a monster night that you're in trouble, which they do have enough power to make it happen. But just so you understand where Adam and myself are on this, they're in a really good spot. So are the Phillies against Wei and Chen, Adam. This guy, you look at Wei and Chen, you're like, man, he's actually been really good lately. At 232 fantasy point games, 1 run across 14 combined innings with 17 strikeouts. And then you dig a little deeper, and you really don't have to dig far. You realize that Wei and Chen at Marlins Park, Marlins Park has been his savior. He has been so much better there. You take him on the road and put him up against right-handed hitters, of which you have many of them: Caesar, Hoskins, Bautista, Ramos, Santana, Altair, Kingery. I won't count Eflin. Quinn. It's a 9-righty lineup. Forget about if some of them are good or not, because some of them aren't. But on the road against righties this year, and it is important because he's a fly ball pitcher, he's allowing a 444 WOBA, a 331 ISO, and 2.55 home runs per 9 with a 12% K rate. Those are awful, awful numbers, Adam. And while the Phillies have all been given up on the season, I still think there's too much good value in this lineup for me to pass up in the form of Ramos and Hoskins. I'll throw Santana, even Altair and Kingery down there at dirt cheap price points if you want to pay for pitching. Pains me to say it, but I do like this Phillies team tonight.
Yeah, and even if you don't totally buy into the Wei and Chen home road splits, because this is a guy who was a pretty average pitcher pitching in Camden Yards for Baltimore. So even if you don't buy into that, he is a fly ball pitcher going into Philadelphia against right-handed power. So
with humidity, with 90% humidity, yeah.
Right. So the baseline here should still be that he's very, very prone to home runs in this spot. Yeah. You have good right-handed power in guys like Hoskins, Ramos. Aaron Altair is a really good value play, I think, at 3,100, and it's a pretty bad Miami bullpen behind Chen as well. So I have no issue, targeting some of these Phillies as one-offs or even stacking them because they do have some cheap bats in there that'll let you pay up for pitching if you're trying to. Ramos is right up there with Gary Sanchez as one of my top catchers on the slate.
Yeah, I'm having a tough time here because I'm trying to work in Yankee and Philly stacks, and I'm ham-making, I'm not crunching them. And Ramos and Sanchez are far and away the 2 best catchers on this slate. I think you would agree with that. If you're on FanDuel, though, let me ask you, say you wanted to stack these 2 teams. You wanted to stack Philly and you wanted to stack the Yankees together. Well, Ramos is 2,800. And the guy's got plenty of power. He's got a 250 isolated slugging rate against lefties. He's got plenty of power. And he's crushed since coming to Citizens Bank Park. And Gary Sanchez is 3,200. Adam, you have a utility spot here, which makes it a whole lot easier to work in those stacks on FanDuel, surprisingly, than it would on DraftKings, even though there's no multi-position eligibility.
Yeah, normally I hate rostering catchers on FanDuel, but both of these guys are in good enough spots. Right. And they're good enough hitters regardless of position that I don't mind it.
And I think they're both very reasonably priced. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
332. I never play catchers there, but
Sanchez is $400 less than Luke Voit.
There you go. The Ramos and Sanchez are unique because they have the same power as like many position players. So I don't look at it like,
Right.
man, I'm playing a catcher. It's just the position, you know.
Right.
Um,
Exactly.
Talk to me about Zach Eflin. This profiles as a very good matchup for him.
Yeah, I like him.
Six
Obviously
righties
facing
too.
yeah,
Sorry.
6 righties in this lineup plus or including Wei and Chen. He has been obviously better against righties than lefties this year. His glaring weakness has been left-handed power, but you really don't have any in this Miami lineup. Derek Dietrich can do some damage. JT Riddle's been hitting well, but still not prototypical power hitters. Not even Justin Bour on this team anymore. So I think it is a good spot for Eflin. My biggest concern is just that he has not been going deep in games whatsoever from an inning standpoint or a pitch count perspective. He only has one game over 100 and over 100 pitches in like his last 10. And some of these games are down, 70, 80 pitches, which concerns me because we've seen Gabe Kapler's willingness to just throw
Ugh,
as many relievers as possible.
what a
So I do
moron he
like
is.
Eflin. What'd you say?
Said what a moron he is. He pulled Nola with 76 pitches. Like, I understand he wasn't having the greatest game, but he's still your best shot of being able to, keep the. I don't. He made he's dude. It tongue ties me just thinking about this guy because of the decisions that he makes. Sorry, go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a nice price point for Eflin. It's a nice matchup, no question. I think he's a good play. You just have the same issues you pretty much always have with Philadelphia pitchers in that Kapler will pull them early, and he's got a bad defense behind him. But he's cheap enough that I think he's certainly a viable option here.
Yeah, so do I. I'm gonna have some Eflin today just because he's very cheap. And the one concern is that say they're down by a run and they have no runners on with no outs in the or 2 outs in the inning, and he pulls Eflin for a pinch hitter. Like,
Yeah, I mean that's where the issue comes. It's not that he pulls. It's not that he has a short leash with guys and pulls them if they're not pitching well. He just pinch hits down by a run in the 5th inning.
yeah, yeah, with 2 outs and runner
Right.
and bases empty. Or even with Nola the other day, it was no outs and a runner on first. No outs and a runner on first. It's like, dude, you still have why? It still doesn't make sense. So that is the biggest concern here. So just at least keep that in mind. But I do think at his price, it is a decent spot, and he is markedly better against righties. So, all right, today on the strategy show, you and Jake discussed Boston here against Noah Syndergaard. Are you still riding that Boston stack against old Thor here at Fenway Park?
Yes, I am.
All right, let's hear it.
Yeah, I mean, I like Boston at home whenever they're going to be low owned. I mean, obviously they're one of the best offenses in baseball. They give you a ton of upside. But when you look at this game in particular, I think that there are a couple of things that stand out. For one, Syndergaard we know cannot hold runners, and you have speed on this Boston team in Betts, Benintendi, Bogarts, Rafael Devers can run, Ian Kinsler can run, Bradley can run. So kind of no matter where you want to go in this lineup, you can get stolen base upside if they get on base. We know that Syndergaard can struggle with his command, leave pitches that are hittable over the plate, and that's why he kind of runs bad during games and gets BABIP'd. So if these Red Sox can get on base against Syndergaard, they have a lot of upside. But then something else that really I think tips it in Boston's favor is the Mets bullpen isn't very good as a whole, but they do have a couple of very, very good relievers. One of them is Seth Lugo, who we've seen time and time again this season when the game is close in the middle innings. He's capable of coming in, throwing a couple of innings, and just shutting down the opposing team and really capping their ceiling. Seth Lugo threw 38 pitches yesterday, so I'm not expecting Lugo to be available for this one, and that means that if the Red Sox are able to drive up Syndergaard's pitch count, even if they don't really get to Syndergaard that much, if they can get him out of there in like the 5th inning, they
Right.
still will have a ton of upside throughout the rest of this game. If they do get to Syndergaard, then it's the sky's the limit for them. I just think there's a lot of ways for Boston to get there. They're going to be very low owned, and they're one of the favorites to score the most runs on any slate that they're on.
Yeah, all valid points. I don't think I'm going to have much of them, but all of the points are well received. And Noah Syndergaard in general has just not been that impressive anyway. So I know he had that monster game against San Francisco, but literally everyone goes and pitches a complete game against San Francisco right now. I mean, they've been that bad, man. San Francisco's just been heinous. But yeah, you have Syndergaard, and then you have who do we have? William Cuevas on the mound for Boston. So Hector Velasquez was scratched. He was originally slated to start this game. Cuevas pitched, what, 55 pitches, then 41 pitches. What do you make of this fella with the perfectly manicured eyebrows?
Yeah,
Take a
don't
look.
know a ton. Don't know a ton about him. Assume that he won't go very deep into this one. 27 years old. It's not like he's like a prospect or anything coming up. Not good strikeout numbers in the minors. Has only thrown 7 innings in the majors this year, but at AAA through 135 innings, 23 starts, 21.6% strikeout percentage, 1.13 home runs per 9 innings. Seems like pretty much like a mediocre pitcher. Uh, I would have interest in the Mets, but it's another team that's just way more expensive than I expected them to be. I mean, Jay Bruce and Todd Frazier's price tags are okay, but Conforto's 5K, McNeil 4,600, Rosario 4,200, Nimmo at 54.
Yeah, it's too
It's
much.
just yeah, man, it's just tough to get to these guys.
And, when you talk about opportunity cost, playing those guys means you're fading a lot of really good hitters on this slate.
Yeah, and not to mention Fenway downplays left-handed power, and most of the guys on the Mets that you would want are left-handed.
Yep, I agree. All right, well, then let's move to Tampa Bay and Oakland. Well, no surprise here. Diego Castillo, opening pitcher for this bullpen game. Now, I'm assuming it's Yarbrough because he last pitched on the 8th and Yanni Chirino's last pitched on the 9th. By the way, isn't it funny how this year we've literally had to revamp our analysis in terms of adding another element to it because we never talked about bullpen games last year. This year, every single day, whether it's Mangden coming in or Bassett or Yarbrough or whoever, or Yohander Mendez for Texas today, you've had to add an entirely new facet of research to your game.
Yeah, it's insanely annoying, and I hate it.
I hate it, dude. And late in the season, we're seeing it way too often now.
Yeah, I'm already like dreading next baseball season because this is 100% going to catch on, and so many teams are going to.
Because it works. And Kevin Cash, you got to give the man some credit. He took a bad roster and made him into a decent baseball team.
Yep.
So go ahead. I mean, Yarbrough, right? We're assuming Yarbrough.
Yeah, I have Yarbrough coming in after Castillo. I also have basically zero interest in this game. 15-game slate. Game is in Tampa Bay. Edwin Jackson, I don't think is particularly good. I'm not looking to go to him, but I'm also not prioritizing anyone from the Rays. I mean, if you wanted the full stack, then whatever, that's fine if you're playing a bunch of lineups, but just nothing I'm prioritizing there. And then on the other side, obviously you have enough power from Oakland that it doesn't matter a whole lot what park they're playing in. But Castillo's, decent. The Rays pitching staff as a whole has been great. Yarbrough's not bad. It just still feels like you're giving up a lot to play guys like Chris Davis or Gotti or Matt Olson. I just don't have anything from this game.
Well, another point too is if you're planning on stacking Oakland and you put Nick Martini into your lineup, who's leading off, be very careful because Yarbrough comes in. I wouldn't be surprised if Martini only sees one at bat, and that is against Diego Castillo. He's seen 7 plate appearances against lefties all year. I wouldn't be surprised if he's immediately pinch hit for the second time around.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So I was even considering him at first because he's super cheap. He's very, very cheap.
You would think that Bob Melvin just wouldn't start him in that case, but we are talking about baseball managers, and they don't do a lot that makes sense.
Well, yeah. I mean, he's guaranteed to see a plate appearance against the lefty or against Castillo. So
and I guess the lineup would kind of make sense like that. Like you have Martini in the platoon advantage, and then you drop Liriano down to 7, where he'll probably face Yarbrough.
Right. So I mean that's the only thing I can think of because I don't know 7 plate appearance. Maybe they'll give him another. I don't know. To me, it's a little bit sketchy though. That's all I'm saying. I don't really have much interest in this game either, so I think it's okay to move on. Cleveland and Detroit. We've got Matt Boyd, and look who it is, Adam. It's Josh Tomlin. The home run machine is back on the bump for the Cleveland Indians. This dude was complete and utter dog shit this year. 22 home runs across 28 appearances, only 6 starts. I can't. When he starts, all he does is give up home runs. And you know that. I know that. We all know that. But he's facing Detroit, and it's not like he's facing this power-laden team. So let's talk about Cleveland hitters first.
Yeah, I mean, it's the Cleveland hitters I think that you're always interested in. Matt Boyd's not a bad pitcher, but he's also not great. And one thing that really has stood out this year is whatever changes he's made, he has made him absolutely atrocious at holding base runners. He's allowed 15 stolen bases.
It's
He
crazy.
has a yeah, -2 RSB, which zero's average. -2 is not good. So guys like Lindor, Jose Ramirez have some added upside there. Obviously, they're really good hitters anyway. Josh Donaldson's only 4,200 against the lefty. That's a really nice price tag, I think. So those three plus Encarnacion, obviously stand out. You can mix in Michael Brantley if you're going for a full stack. Mix in Jan Gomes. I think that's fine. So yeah, I mean, I like Cleveland here. It's a bad bullpen behind Boyd as well.
Yeah, 15 stolen bases and only 2 caught stealing, I believe. So I really like guys like Lindor here, who is very solid from the left side of the plate. Lot of fly balls. Like you said, Boyd is not bad, but at the same time, he's not exactly great either. And I think just Cleveland at home here with the speed that they have. I have some teams where it's like stacking Philly or stacking New York, and then I have Ramirez, Donaldson, Lindor, something like that. So
Yeah, and
that's
Ramirez is second base eligible now too.
isn't that beautiful? Yeah, it's a beautiful thing because you get Donaldson in there at third base, and it opens everything up. So I like that a lot. That's kind of the only place I'm going here. I know it's crazy, but I don't I don't know if I'm just gonna I don't know if I'm gonna have the room to work in Detroit bats, even though Josh Tomlin gives up so much power. Maybe you have it. I mean, obviously, guys like Castellanos are always in play, but maybe you have a different opinion on this team as a whole.
I really like Kristen Stewart. He's hitting
Yeah.
second, 4,200. This guy has power. 56, 50, 60 grade power, 60 raw power at AAA this year. 216 ISO, 373 WOBA, 23 home runs. Steamer's ISO projection for him is 204 with a 110 WRC plus. Castellanos is up to 4,800, but you have Kristen Stewart at 42. I imagine he will have virtually no tournament ownership. So if I were max entering, I think I would definitely have a decent amount of Stewart here just because I think he's got a lot of upside for the price.
All right, cool. Yeah, it makes sense to me. Any way that I can target Josh Tomlin and feel okay about it, I'm probably going to do it. Like he's just not good. I mean, he really
2,800 James McCann isn't insane either.
no, not at all. No, it's not. It's just hard to get to him when Ramos and Sanchez are in such
Yeah,
good
yeah.
spots.
I
But
mean, he's obviously not in the same class as those guys, but as a punt, if I can get someone for 2,800 against Josh Tomlin, I'm down.
right, it's not crazy. And this team, in terms of stacking them all together, is not tough if you wanted to get one expensive pitcher in too. So, yeah, I agree with that. What about Washington and Atlanta, though? This is actually a game that I don't think I have any of right now.
I'm actually pretty high on Kevin Gossman today.
Yeah?
Um,
Okay. Tell me
yeah,
why.
so it's obviously a tough matchup. I mean, this Washington team doesn't have a lot of strikeouts in the lineup. They do have a lot of good hitters, but we all know that I believe Gossman should be better than he has been, and that I thought he would get better going over to Atlanta and working with Tyler Flowers. We'd seen some good fantasy performances after the trade, but nothing really seemed all that exciting. He moved over on the pitching rubber, so was is throwing from a bit different spot, and it's basically the same thing he did a couple years ago when he was successful. But outside of that, we hadn't really seen anything change. But in his last start against Arizona, he didn't have a very good start, but he threw his splitter about 40% of the time, which if you go back to last season when he pitched to Caleb Joseph with Baltimore, that was the thing that made him really successful, was just living on that pitch. He threw it 40% to lefties. He threw it 40% to righties in that start against the Diamondbacks.
Yeah.
If Tyler Flowers has finally figured out that you just call this pitch and let him go, then I think that's really good. And even though Gossman didn't have a good outing in terms of results, he did have a 16.5% swinging strike rate in that game. He's had double-digit swinging strike rates in 4 consecutive games now. I think that he's at least trending in the right direction. And it's obviously a tough matchup, but he's going to be completely unowned. And on top of that, when you compare him to someone like Eflin, who I think does have, obviously a better matchup against the Marlins, you don't have those pitch count concerns with Gossman. Like, he's going to throw 100 plus pitches here. He does go deep in the games when he's pitching well. He throws a lot of pitches. So I just think that I actually feel a little bit better about Gossman in tournaments here than I do Eflin.
Yeah, he also has higher upside. No doubt about it. Um, guys like Gossman are tournament plays that I don't ever mind, even if it's not a good spot. It never bothers me. I wasn't particularly high on him, but I keep finding myself coming into this range at SP2 and not really having anywhere else to look, whether it be Shoemaker or Keuchel, who I just never play in tournaments because when is he going to beat you? You've said that a million times. Matt Boyd's at 8,400. So with Gossman, it's not, he doesn't have a particularly great matchup, but you're not really paying for him either. He's Matt Harvey's price.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's very inexpensive here, so I'm not as concerned about the matchup. If he were popular, I would find a different direction to go, but I don't think he's going to be popular at all, so I'm more than happy to take a chance on him here.
What about Scherzer?
I like him. I'm not finding myself getting him in handmade lineups. At least when I used Fantasy Cruncher earlier, I was getting a pretty decent amount of Scherzer, up around 40%. He's not someone that I would be looking to cut back on if my if my projections are giving me a lot of him. But just in general, I don't find myself needing to pay up that high. I feel better about my lineups when I go with two mid-range pitchers and fit in more bats.
Me too. Now I will say, if you wanted to stack the Phillies with him, like that is one way you could do it. Like it's not impossible. Hoskins is expensive, but there are some cheap Philly bats that make it doable. And there are some other teams that aren't that expensive. So while I'm not particularly high on Scherzer, it's not because I don't like him. It's because I don't love how my lineups look with him in there. And that's really all it is. So, yeah, I think we're in agreement there. But no one's gonna think, nope. If I looked at a lineup and a winning lineup with Scherzer, I'm not going to say, oh, how did that happen? It's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
And then you have Harvey pitching for Cincinnati and Cole Hamels. You mentioned earlier today that you do have some interest in Cole Hamels. He's not facing a particularly high strikeout lineup, but he's also facing a team that doesn't, outside of Eugenio Suarez, they really don't have power against lefties.
Yeah, I mean, I just think Hamels is a good pitcher. We talked about it a lot when he was with Texas, that between the combination of pitching in Texas during the summer and a lot of just difficult matchups for him, his numbers kind of were just worse than he really is. And we've seen him be much better since going to the Cubs. I don't think this is a particularly scary matchup against Cincinnati. Hamels is more than capable of getting out right-handed hitters with his good changeup. So I like him, but again, I don't feel like in a lot of my lineups, I've kind of found myself where I can sacrifice one hitter by a little bit and get from like Gossman, Eflin to Hamels. And I just don't feel that strongly about Hamels. Like if I'm deciding between, Mike Trout and like a $4,000 hitter and, and Hamels or Gossman, I've been leaning towards just going Gossman and getting in Trout because I just don't feel that strongly about the difference.
All right. Yeah, I'm with you there. I don't have a problem with him. I don't know what his ceiling looks like here, but I think he's a pretty safe play. By the way, since he came to the Cubs, he's allowing 0.18 home runs per 9. So it's a huge improvement for Hamels. I will say, though, Eugenio Suarez is always a good play when facing a lefty that allows home runs to righties. I never sleep on Suarez. He just has so much power from the right side against lefties, and he's done it all season long against a lot of good left-handed pitchers. So that's the one problem spot for Hamels. Outside of that, I'm not concerned. I do, however, really like some of these lefties against Harvey, Adam. Like Harvey, I know, made some improvements since coming to Cincinnati, but over his last 9 starts, over the last 2 months, he has a 369 WOBA, but 293 ISO, and 2.9 home runs per 9 to lefties. As I put in the deep dive, so forgive me if I'm not buying into his transformation with the Reds. I'm just not. I think he's better, but he hasn't been good against lefties in about 2 years now. And you have guys like Daniel Murphy that are really cheap on DraftKings, Rizzo batting leadoff. A couple lefties atop this lineup I do like today. Just don't know how much I love the Cubs as a stack. Where are you at on this Chicago team today?
Yeah, I mean, I like Murphy and I like Rizzo. First base isn't particularly strong, and you can actually play both guys there on DraftKings, so that's appealing. Second base isn't strong either, and Murphy's price tag is really nice. So I don't mind either of those guys, but I think I'm with you. It's just that I like some of these other stacks more than I like the Cubs. Harvey, I think, is good enough, and he really hasn't been bad at all against righties.
Right.
So it's just kind of an expensive stack in some spots, and I haven't found myself really looking to go there.
That's where I'm at too. Plus, I like third base a lot, and I don't know if I want to squeeze Brian in there. For me, and as we both just said, it really is these two lefties towards the top of the lineup, and I do like both of them. And you can play both of them first, second base, wherever you want. Um, Moving on to Houston and Arizona, as I mentioned, I wrote the deep dive today, and I did list Robbie Ray in there, Adam, because on this slate, I'm not huge on paying up, but I do think Robbie Ray away from home, where he's been very good this year, is always worth at least considering, even against tough teams. He has a 30% K rate against righties. Is it a tricky, very difficult lineup? There's no doubt. This could end up being going very poorly for Robbie Ray, but anyone with this much upside on a day where I expect him to be very much overlooked, I'm willing to consider him. What are you doing with this game, if anything?
Yeah, I don't see myself going to Ray, but I wouldn't want to talk anyone off of it as long as they understand the risks. Like you said, he
Right.
clearly has the upside here. And if you're going to roster a volatile pitcher like Robbie Ray, the best time to do it is when he's not going to be popular.
100%. Yeah.
Right. Like he can absolutely win you a tournament. So I don't have an issue with it. I don't see myself doing it. I do have some interest in the Houston bats, though, because we know that Ray racks up a lot of strikeouts. He also walks a lot of guys and gives up a lot of hard contact. It's hard to strike out a lot of these Astros hitters, basically the entire top of the order. And they all just have so much power that I think it's a spot where Ray could run into some trouble here. You have them at reasonable price tags with, Springer, Altuve at 43 and 4,400. Correa is only 4,000. So another team and where facing good pitcher, but ownership, and just have so much level.
Yeah, do not disagree with that either. It's one of these where both sides could make it happen. And I think when you have guys like Bregman and Altuve, guys that have such low K rates, he could certainly run into trouble. But I like that, right now he's projected at like 2% ownership on DraftKings, and he's not cheap enough to where people are going to say, okay, I'll play him anyway. So risky, yes, but we both know that Robbie Ray does have the upside, the 10 strikeout upside, and I like that on a night like tonight. So anything else on this game, though? You have Keuchel going for Houston, and we all know what you get out of Keuchel each day.
Yeah, no, I mean, Keuchel's going to probably have a good start, and he's not going to be anywhere near my fantasy lineups because he almost never has a start good enough for me to want to play him. So I'm not going to the Diamondbacks bats. If I had to, choose any, I would obviously go Pollock or Goldschmidt. But I'm not really excited about either side.
Neither am I. Are you excited about Chris Archer or Gio Gonzalez in this Brewers-Pittsburgh game at the very hitter-friendly Miller Park?
I would not be upset if the roof at the stadium fell in and they couldn't play.
So you're not huge on this game, is what you're saying.
I just hate both pitchers, and I hate when they're this price tag because they very easily can beat you, and you end up just like having to guess if it's going to happen. Gio obviously was really good against the Giants, but like you said earlier, that's really not saying much. He's been just so bad all season long that I'm not buying into it. I'm not going to him. Chris Archer here, I do expect to have a lot of ownership simply because he is $7,000 on DraftKings, and people roster him whenever he's that price because he does have upside. But we just really haven't seen it this year. I mean, we're into the middle of September, and we just haven't seen Chris Archer be able to put really good games together. And then you have this tough matchup against Milwaukee. There's only 3 lefties in the lineup, but it's just a deep, very good lineup. And on top of that, going back to his time with Tampa, we saw Archer struggle outside of Tampa. This is a big park downgrade, and from Tampa Bay, it's a big park downgrade from Pittsburgh. It's just a pretty scary spot, I think, for Archer. If I didn't think he was going to be popular, I would consider rolling the dice just based on upside, kind of like we talked about with Kevin Gausman. But I think he will be popular, and I just would much rather go a different route.
Well, I think you worded it perfectly. It's just more so like when there's 15 days left in the season, when do we say, okay, maybe we're just not going to get, previous form Archer, the one we were accustomed to? Like maybe it's just not happening anymore,
Yeah, and I mean, this is a spot where, yes, the price tag is appealing, but outside of that, even if he had been mixing in, if he had been showing the ability to, not get blasted every fifth inning when he does get off to a good start, it's still just, I don't think would be a very appealing spot. I mean, this is a 4.7 implied run total for Milwaukee. It's a huge park downgrade. It's a really difficult lineup. I don't see it at high ownership.
Yeah, I don't either. I even said to you this morning, I was very surprised to see his ownership that high, or at least projected there, because I don't see the upside here either. Like what you said, I would rather go Gossman 10 times out of 10 in a spot like this, especially with Archer's ownership.
Yeah,
Like
that's where
just
I'm to
yeah, no
go
question.
after.
Or F, yeah. All right. What about St. Louis and the Dodgers? I actually don't mind, by the way. I don't think Bueller's the craziest play. I really don't. I mean, I know that no one's going to play him, and I kind of like that, but he's been good against lefties and righties, but there's like 6 righties. I don't think it's the craziest play if you can't get all the way up to Strasburg and you wanted a low-owned guy. But then once again, it's more so that I would just be doing it because nobody's really targeting him, and I think he's a good pitcher, even though I don't believe that his upside is as high as it's been thus far. Do you have any interest in this game between Flaherty, who's been amazing, and Walker Buehler, who's also been very good?
I have nothing. I think Bueller and Flaherty both fall into the Robbie Ray category where they're talented enough that if you wanted to play them at low ownership, then go for it. I'm not going to talk you off of it. But I don't like hitters against them. I don't want to pay price tags for them in their respective matchups. So I have nothing.
All right, fair enough then. So no hitters from this game either, right? That's a complete wash.
Yeah, I'm pretending it doesn't exist.
All right, sounds good. Are you pretending that Minnesota and Kansas City doesn't exist between Jose Berrios, who his velocity's back up, by the way, but his production is absolutely down. And you and I have pointed out consistently throughout the season, his strikeout rate, his ERA, his WHIP, everything is way worse on the road. And this late in the season, I'm taking notice.
Yeah, I mean, Jake and I talked about that this morning. I don't have a concrete reason for why I think that's the case, but it's been the case ever since he came up in 2016. His numbers on the road this year are virtually identical to last year, with a strikeout percentage between 20 and 21%. And on a slate like this, where I am trying to, kind of be picky and decide between guys, it's enough for me to prefer Cole Hamels to Berrios at that same price range. So I'm not really interested in Berrios here. I'm not really interested in the Royals either. I mean, you do get stolen base upside from guys like Merrifield and Mondesi. They're capable of running on anyone, but it's not a great stolen base matchup. Berrios has allowed 7 this season, 6 last season, 15-game slate, just nothing.
Yeah, me neither. Me neither. I don't think Polanco is a terrible play just because he's cheap, and Jorge Lopez is somebody that when you look at some of these expected numbers, like they're not good. I mean, he's got a 367 x WOBA, a 270, 278 x ISO against lefties across almost 50 innings. Like he has a 268 BABIP too, and a half a home run per 9. So I think you're going to see regression here for sure from Lopez. I just don't think it's really necessary to prioritize any of these guys. And you know how high I've been on Kansas City recently, especially with the base stealing upside. But I mean, it's not the easiest base stealing matchup. Berrios has struggled, but he's still not a gas can. And you have 14 other games to choose from, Adam. It kind of just takes it off the board by default.
Yep.
All right, well then let's keep going. We're not trying to go quick here, but we can't pretend to have interest in games that we don't have interest in. It's kind of where we're at right now. Amos Burns said Berrios is bad, all in on Royals. I don't think Berrios is bad. I think something's wrong right now, but I don't think he's bad. He also said excited to see if Laffy's riding KC with me. Amos, man, I've been on them every day. They've done us really well. Merrifield stole his 36th base last night. I'll probably regret it, but no Royals for me today. None for me. I hope they do well for your sake, though, and then you can come and laugh at me on Monday. Adam Shoemaker, Ronis Elias. Of course, James Paxton is injured or sick or what. He's got pneumonia. Like this guy's never healthy, and it's really a shame. But anyway, we got Elias on the bump tonight instead of Paxton.
Yeah, I mean, mostly interested in bats here. Shoemaker at home, it has been much better than on the road, and it makes sense because he's a fly ball pitcher. It's a good park to suppress home runs. I think he gets a little bit of a benefit, kind of like Jared Weaver did from the rock pile too, and you see his strikeouts go up. But this just is a Mariners team that I don't really target all that often with pitching, so I'm not really looking to go to Shoemaker. And the Mariners are actually very reasonably priced. Obviously, it's a tough park; it's a decent pitcher, but he can struggle with home runs at times. You have Nelson Cruz at 4,100, Robbie Cano at 42, Haniger at 42, Healy at a weak first base position at only 3,500. There is certainly big time home run upside from these guys, and they're actually when I ran my first set of lineup crunches earlier, the first lineup I got was a Max Scherzer Seattle lineup. And from an upside perspective, I certainly think that there's plenty there. So I don't have an issue with that. And then on the other side, the Angels are outrageous, particularly, I mean, the ones that you really want, Trout and Otani. But I kind of like that in tournaments. I mean, Mike Trout at 5,800 on an outfield, a very, very deep outfield slate is going to not get the ownership that he normally would against Ronnie Elias. And, Trout's just obviously phenomenal against everyone. But Elias also is a guy that relies very heavily on his changeup. Mike Trout just has, otherworldly numbers against left-handed changeups in terms of expected WOBA and expected ISO. I like getting Trout into my lineups where I can, which isn't
Yeah,
saying a
me
lot,
too.
obviously.
Dude, him and Otani, it's crazy how expensive they've been. It really, really is. But they're still very good plays. It's just how do you get them into lineups is the question, and we shall see. TMCB74 said Daniel Palka for the home run. I actually don't mind Palka at all tonight. I put him as an honorable mention in the deeper dive or in the deep dive as well. So look, he's always good. And then Earl says Ryan O'Hearn dinger. You know why, Earl? Because Ryan O'Hearn is the GOAT. He went he was 0 for 0 with 3 walks the other day out of the 9 hole, and then ended up striking out in a full count. But I was like going 0 for 0 with 4 walks out of the 9 hole. Dude, only studs do that.
All
Only
the shit
studs.
you've given me for Alex Gordon this year, and then Ryan O'Hearn becomes your boy.
That's because Ryan O'Hearn's a boss, man. All right. Only 2 to go here. We got San Diego and Texas. Good old Robbie Erlin set to toe the rubber tonight, and Connor Sadzik. What a weird name that is, starting off the bullpen game. And then we're expected to see Yohander Mendez. I'm going to put it this way to you, Adam. I actually think a super low owned Padres stack is in the cards for me today if Mendez comes in because this dude stinks. But talk to me about this one here at Petco.
Yeah, I'm with you with some of these Padres bats. I wish Hunter Renfroe wasn't $5,200.
It's crazy, dude. It's crazy. I know.
Especially because he's 100% striking out his first at bat.
Yeah, he's the one I mentioned earlier in the deep dive that I was like very affordable across the. Oh my god!
Yeah, I think I did the same thing on the show with Jake earlier. So yeah, I mean, Sadzik's a reliever. He throws really hard. I expect him to just mow down the top of this Padres lineup. But after him, it is a good spot against Mendez. Will Myers is a good play. Mejia, I have. If you're looking for a pretty good hitting catcher and you're trying to get away from Ramos and Sanchez, I think Mejia is your guy leading off. Top prospect came over in the Brad Hand trade from Cleveland. Franmil Reyes obviously has a ton of power. He's cheap. So yeah, I don't mind the Padres. I don't mind Robbie Erlin either. I mean, it's a very negative park shift for Texas. Erlin's cheap enough that he doesn't need to do a ton to get by, and he lets you get all the bats. So I'm fine with pretty much anyone Padres.
Me too, man. Who would have thought, right? Who would have thought? But yeah, I actually I like this team quite a bit. I mean, the question is, you really don't know how many innings Mendez is going to go, but still, it's still a spot that you can get on board. Anything else from this game, or mostly just Padres?
Just the
Anything?
Padres.
Yeah, me too. All right, last one, Adam. Here we go, and then we will close out today's deeper dive and send you on your way. We've got Pittsburgh or San Francisco and Colorado. I've been waiting to talk about Tyler Anderson. I'll let you take the floor first.
Tyler Anderson's really good. Tyler Anderson gets a park shift going into AT&T. Tyler Anderson faces a terrible team in the Giants. Tyler Anderson would be my highest owned pitcher. I'm sure it won't go well, but I'm still going to do it. And I'm not deterred by any of his poor outings recently. He's not a guy that has big home road splits, but 5 of his last 6 starts have been in Coors. The one that was outside of Coors was against the Astros. In Coors, he faced, I think, the Dodgers twice. He faced the Cardinals, faced the Giants and the Padres. But his stuff looks fine. His price tag is insanely cheap. I just see no reason to get away from Tyler Anderson here. And even Chris Stratton, I think, is a good pitching play. I mean, 60 degrees in AT&T on a slate where we have plenty of bats to pay for, facing the Cardinals with a huge negative park shift. I think that Chris Stratton's a pretty reasonable option as well. In my single lineup that I'm hand building before I go hang out with the family, I am going back and forth actually between Gossman and Stratton in addition to Anderson.
Yeah. I don't have much Stratton, but I definitely have a lot of Anderson. A lot of my night will definitely be contingent upon whether or not Anderson gets blown up. It's really that simple. I don't have hitters from this game. I'm assuming you don't either.
Nope.
Yeah, I like Anderson a lot too, though. He's got a lot of swinging strikes this year. He's traded ground balls for that, but at AT&T Park, that doesn't really matter. It's actually a good thing. So good park conditions, good spot for Anderson for sure. Let's hit our positions. Check if there's any questions. How many innings for Elias? I really don't know, but it's not a game that I have much interest in. I like the Angels, just hard for me to fit him. You have any idea how long he goes?
No, not sure.
All right. What are your thoughts on Anderson and FanDuel cash?
In cash, I haven't tried to build a cash lineup, but normally there are so many underpriced hitters on FanDuel. It's really hard for me not to get to Scherzer, I would think. But if I don't go Scherzer, then I would just want to go to that mid range and take Anderson.
All right. Nick Hill says thoughts on Toronto bats.
They're cheap. I had more interest in them this morning when I thought Morales and Smoke would be in the lineup.
All right. Let's hit our positions here. Pitcher, what do you have for me?
I mean, obviously, if you can get up to Scherzer, go for it. But I will mostly be living in Tyler Anderson's my number one. I like Gossman. I like Stratton. I like Eflin.
Yeah. Anderson, Eflin. I like your Gossman call. And then at the top, like I said, if you're trying to be different and you can't get up to Scherzer in tournaments, I don't think Walker Buehler's crazy, and I think Robbie Ray always has enough strikeout upside. Oh, and Cole Hamels, I think, is a fine cash play too. Catcher, for me, Adam, honestly, I'm just going between Ramos and Sanchez.
Yeah, Ramos, Sanchez, Mejia.
All right, first base. Not that deep.
No, it sucks. Anthony Rizzo, Mitch Moreland, and Luke Voigt.
All right, yeah, I have Rizzo. Carlos Santana, I really don't mind because I like that Phillies team. And Trey Mancini, I like a lot too. Oh, and Ryan O'Hearn, just because he's Ryan O'Hearn. Second base, give me Daniel Murphy, specifically on DraftKings, really inexpensive. Gleyber Torres and Jonathan Villar. What about you?
Jose Ramirez, Gleyber Torres, and Yohan Moncada.
All right, third base.
Miguel Andujar, Josh Donaldson, and Rafael Devers.
All right, at third base, I'll go with Ramirez, although I have a lot of them at second base. We'll go with Ramirez, Andujar, and you said Donaldson. I think Bautista is at least worth a shot in stacks if you wanted to go with the Phillies. Shortstop, give me Francisco Lindor, really good spot for him. I do like Javi Baez here. And then give me, you know what? It's crazy. Bregman, by the way, too. But Kingery is 2,900. He's so bad, but he's 2,900. What about you, Adam?
Lindor, Xander Bogaerts. If you need a punt, I like JT Riddle.
All right, outfield, go.
Mike Trout, Betts, Benintendi, Nelson Cruz, Jackie Bradley, George Springer, Trey Mancini, Aaron Altair, Rhys Hoskins, anyone on the Yankees.
Yeah, same with me. All right, top stacks, and then we'll get out of here.
Yankees, Boston, Philly, Houston, Milwaukee. I like leveraging against guys like Chris Archer on slates like this.
Okay. Yeah, Yankees, Phillies, San Diego. I do have interest in, assuming Yohander Mendez comes in, which he should. Cleveland, I like, and then I think one of like Detroit or the White Sox are going to do some damage. It's just tough to tell which one. So that'll do it for us. If you have questions, you can hit us up in Slack. Follow us on Twitter at Loughy_D, LOUGHY_D. And, of course, Adam at ShipMyMoneyDFS. All right. We will be back with you on, I think, Monday, Adam, Monday, for some more baseball talk.
Yeah, as far as I know.
All right. Until then, good luck. And someone take something down tonight. Lots of big prize pools out there on this 15-gamer. And Ben, Raza, and myself will be with you Sunday morning. A lot of content and a lot of NFL content throughout the weekend. So stick with us right here on awesomemode.com. All right. Good luck tonight.